Hello and welcome to this exclusive ITV and System1 webinar. I'm Nina Hossain, and today ITV and System1 are launching Breakthrough, a report and playbook examining how new and returning businesses can grow with TV advertising. Now, we all know TV is a powerful medium, a channel that almost every adult in the UK spends time with each and every week. A platform for the biggest cultural and current events of our times, and a place, an unrivaled platform for connecting with people on the most powerful emotional levels. But it is also a stage for small businesses to turn into household names, launching themselves into wider culture and driving profitable growth. Today, our panel of experts, including some advertisers who are succeeding already, will delve into how brands can harness TV's full potential with insights on creativity, media planning, and crucially, on measurement. We'll be taking your questions a little later on, so please get them through to me using Slido, www.slido.com, and please use the hashtag Breakthrough. First then, let's get the lowdown on the Breakthrough report. I've got two people here to talk to you. First is System1's Chief Innovation Officer, Orlando Wood, and joining him is ITV Commercial's Senior Strategist, James Boat. Welcome to you both. Gentlemen, over to you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. Good morning to you watching as well. Very exciting time. I hope you were excited when you first saw your logo for the first time, when you saw your product for the first time. Well, the moment you launch your TV campaign for the first time is just as exciting as those as well, I guarantee it. We're here to demonstrate how it is and also how to make the best step forward for the first time successfully. But firstly, let's look at some information that explains the benefit of TV in a more granular level. Now, this first chart here looks at the impact of TV and its relationship within a wider media mix. So even though TV can only represent on average around 35% of a business's media budget, it does deliver over and above what that return is, more so than any other medium when it comes to long-term ROI, and on average about 46% of the contribution to business effects. Now, Orlando, you've worked on a number of studies that show just why TV is as important as we believe it is here at ITV.
Absolutely. Well, look, if we were to summarise why, we'd say there were three things, really. TV offers an advertiser depth of attention, so perhaps 4 or 5 times the length of attention per ad than something playing out on a social media platform, for instance. But it also gives you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the nation. It's got reach, fantastic reach. And of course, it's all regulated, so it provides a platform for brands that people trust. And that's really important for advertising.
And that kind of security and that reach all contributes to business effects. You know, it's so funny to talk about brands because some people feel that is a little bit of a woolly term, but brand effects are business effects, aren't they?
Absolutely, and brands, you know, are all about trust. That's what they're about. It's probably worth talking about brands and mental availability of brands for a minute and its relationship with attention, because those two things do tend to go together. This was a study that I worked on with Peter Field, Karen Nelson-Field and Rob Britton. We looked at Advertising Council Australia effectiveness data for a number of campaigns. We divided the campaigns in two according to whether they used high attention or low attention media, and you can see that in this chart here. And what we found was that the campaigns that used higher attention media were much better able to imprint the brand on people's memories, to create mental availability, the middle chart, the middle bars here. And also that translates, of course, into business effects, market share gain, important things such as that. And then just on the left of this chart, this illustrates just how much longer these campaigns were being seen by people in terms of the number of seconds. So this direct link between attention, mental availability and business effects.
And as Nina said at the introduction, it is about becoming a household name, but you don't need to be one to see these effects. It works for small businesses, in fact, even more so as a percentage than big businesses.
It's a bigger uplift because, you're, as I said, introducing yourself to the nation for the first time, really.
Yeah, and really we can see an uplift in sales of over a third, almost, when it comes to brands with a value of under £50 million, which is really impressive to see. Now, in order to get your TV campaign right for the first time, there are three main components that we've identified within the Breakthrough report. Firstly, creative, and later on we'll look at media planning and measurement. But as we've got the author of Lemon and Lookout and System1's Chief Innovation Officer, Orlando, why don't you take us through some creative findings?
Absolutely. Well, look, when we're thinking about creative, we have to think about the job that we want it to do. And there have long been these two schools of advertising, one that I'm calling showmanship and the other that I'm calling salesmanship, and they do different things. So let's start with showmanship, because showmanship is there to put your brand before the public. It's there to lodge your brand in memory through an emotional appeal, usually involving narrative of some kind. And emotional advertising does two things very, very well. First, it helps to drive your base sales, but also it helps to improve your pricing power, which helps you to maintain your margins. So let's have a look at an example of what I would describe as a showmanship ad.
Hi, Gwen, right? Benji, I live just...
Benji, of course, from...
Yes. Hi. Bit of a weird one, but you haven't been getting any of my parcels, have you?
I love, can't say I have.
It's just I've ordered quite a few things online recently, and with our addresses being so difficult to find, I can see why it might get...
I'll let you know if anything arrives.
So showmanship advertising doesn't assume the interest of the audience. It tries to create interest in the audience for the brand or product. And it starts broad. Showmanship works best with a broad reach audience. And in this ad, you can see it starts broad. We don't know what this is about, but gradually we get closer in on the product and service. And there's that wonderful moment of psychological transformation as you go through that emotional response. So that's a good example of a showmanship ad. But there's also something called salesmanship. And salesmanship is about giving people a reason why they should buy and making it easy for them to do it. This is about closing down the sale. So let's have a look at this ad, which I think does those things.
G'day there. Heard the buzz about Aussie 3-Minute Miracle? Don't just take our word for it. Ooh, what conditioner is this? Everyone is talking about Aussie 3-Minute Miracle. That's when Aussie tames any mane. Awesomely conditioned hair. From Aussie. No wonder Aussie's the UK's #1 conditioning treatment. Aussie, have you tried it yet? Hop to Boots and get yours now.
So there we are, the 3-minute miracle is the reason why you should buy this, and it gives you evidence at the end there where you might go and buy it at Boots. So salesmanship advertising tends to be talking already to the half interested, and that's why it's better thought about in terms of narrower targets and the ability to target when it comes to your media.
Brilliant. And may I say, the evidence is already here, I should say, with Aussie. These are two very different ads, but there's a consistent way of scoring that System1 applies so that you can get a good read across all advertising.
That's right. So at System1, we have developed an approach that enables you to look at the strength of your showmanship advertising by looking at the emotional response that people have when they see the ad. And we grade, I suppose, your advertising using a star rating, which we've connected with lasting business effects. So the star rating is for long-lasting effects, and it's your showmanship measure. Spike rating is for measuring the short-term spike in sales that you get from your salesmanship advertising. And this is for your salesmanship. We also have a fluency measure, which is how well people know that this is your brand at the end of the ad. and also fast fluency. So how quickly do they know that it's for you? Now that fast fluency is linked to short-term sales effects and also feeds into the spike measure too. So these are the measures that we use to determine the strength of your showmanship and your salesmanship.
And you've been using these measures for many years now, and in fact this isn't the first report that System1 has conducted.
No, it's not. It's not. So back in 2000, we worked with Tom Roach, and Tom Roach wrote a fantastic report called Scaling Up Without Screwing Up, and it looked at new-to-TV advertisers. Looked at about 200 of these. You can see some examples of the brands on the left who were advertising on TV for the first time. And we looked at the strength of their performance on these measures. And what we found was that in the year one, the ads for these companies was the score was slightly lower than the average for TV. 1.7 stars plays 2.2. But the spike rating was slightly better relative to, to the average, because these were, I guess, people coming onto TV for the first time looking to make a mark with the salesmanship advertising. That was the style of advertising that they brought with them. Mm-hmm. But we've now updated this, and we have done a bigger study. Here are some of the brands on the left here, with about 500 ads, 163 or so companies involved, and we've looked at how they perform today, new to TV advertisers. And the good news is that they're actually performing as well as the TV average. So fantastic evidence to show that it's perfectly possible to perform well in your first year on TV.
It does. It seems to be that the only thing really that holds back a new brand is simply the fact that not many people know them yet.
That's right. The fluency scores are a bit low, but you'd expect those to build, and TV is a fantastic medium on which to do that.
And that's what we're going to come on to now in just a second. For media planning, now that the creative has been established, there are generally two ways that a brand can set themselves up for success on TV. Firstly, laying the foundations, and then also going into that brand building salesmanship that you were mentioning earlier. For foundations, it's really important to understand whether what you're trying to do is break open a new category, start something that's quite niche and take it mainstream, or disrupt an established category, introduce a new kind of soda or a new trainer, for example. Now, for new categories, it's all about that salesmanship, isn't it? It's all about introducing yourself, making sure that for people that do see something brand new, they really understand what it is to start
Setting
with.
out your product and service for people for the first time, isn't it? So it does require a bit of explanation, and this is what we're about, and this is why you should buy it.
Yeah. So we're going to look at a couple of ads now from brands that have set up a new category for themselves and broken into an established one. The first one, let's look at Absolute, which is a brand for advertising collagen.
Find your Absolute at absolutecollagen.com.
So two things really stand out here about this ad. Firstly, the use of Absolute, and then the openness within which the lifestyle messaging can kind of come through. And then secondly, the way that the product is consumed. But I wonder if you could talk for a second just about what we're seeing on the right-hand side.
Yeah, so with this ad, it's quite direct. Absolute blank, absolute blank, absolute blank, and absolute collagen. So we're introducing the brand for the first time. You can see on the right here the emotional response, happiness and surprise in the light and dark green on the top of the chart on the right. But then you've got the fluency trace at the bottom, so this is brand recognition through the spot. And you can see at the end there, when the reveal comes in, that people know what the brand is at this point.
Right, let's look now at another ad. This is from Butternut Box, a dog food company, but the difference with this one is it's direct to consumer, not something that you can buy in shops.
At Butternut Box, we believe dogs deserve better. So we're all about serving them fresh, tasty, healthy meals. Personalized, perfectly portioned, and balanced to suit your dog's needs. Made with human quality ingredients, we gently cook and deliver them to your door. Fetch 15% off your first box at butternutbox.com.
So this one's taking in still the same bit of information, but it doesn't need to do as much explaining other than its USP.
Yes, the USP being that it's like human food, or from that quality. You can see here the brand recognition is very strong within the first few seconds. Also the emotional response, there's an animal involved, of course, always very good for attracting attention and driving an emotional response.
And a surprising thing to hear about human quality food. I'll take their word for
absolutely.
it. For brands that are starting out on TV, the media planning can look very focused as salesmanship in itself. So you're looking at a targeted audience. We've got so many data points now on ITVX that targeting all across TV has become really powerful. But also moments in the schedule as well, so daytime being a really efficient buy. Yeah. But for those brands that are looking to advertise in a more broad kind of sense and go to the second stage, which is brand building, now's the time to inject a bit more personality into the creative.
It certainly is. And, it's all about projecting personality, really.
And high reach moments as well. So using peak advertising to show how good your brand is to millions of people.
Absolutely. Peak time, we should rebrand it Showtime, because that's what it is. It's for showmanship advertising.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a look at a brand that has made a great success of this. This is now an ad for Spoke, and this is their second ad with us on ITV. Their first one, we might hear a little bit more about later on as we have the founder joining us in the panel. Let's take a look at their latest ad.
As an abnormally handsome man, I'm used to getting everything I want.
Your standard room. Penthouse is ready for you, sir.
But my rock-hard waist and Adonis-like legs have always made it tough finding perfectly fit trousers. But with Spoke, that isn't a problem. Because Spoke trousers are made to fit almost any body type. Even ridiculously attractive ones. Like mine.
So tongue-in-cheek humour, but also actually showing the product, and that's very important too, of course.
Yeah, it's often not a question of salesmanship or showmanship. It's almost like a dial that gets moved as a brand turns from one to another.
That's absolutely right, yeah. And so you can see here the brand recognition at the bottom, halfway through, really peaking halfway through.
And again, similar with media planning, it's not a question of daytime or peak, but it's a mixture of both and blending high-reach moments with high-frequency ones as well.
That's right.
Okay, so now you've got a killer creative and you've got a really robust media plan. How do you measure it? In the Breakthrough report, there are two key things that we explore in this report. Firstly, the impact of TV, not just on sales, but on a range of other measures as well. It impacts web visits, it impacts search, it impacts inbound calls, if you still use such a mechanic. And then the whole campaign effect as well, because while daytime is really good at driving results in the immediate term, results of peak can still be felt 3 months in advance or even longer.
That's right. I mean, 70 to 60%, that sort of amount of your sales come from this sustained kind of period where you get these sustained effects over time. That comes largely from showmanship advertising, but from showmanship on broad reach media. That's what TV excels at.
And setting up a plan that's robust at the start will really allow you to get a good read on what success looks like for your TV campaign, for your brand, and within your category as well, exploring all the little different niches there are around buying cycles or consideration time length.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. So we've had a look at what makes fantastic creative, what makes a good media plan, and how to measure it. But I think that's enough of the chartage for now. I'm going to leave
Fantastic.
you to join
James.
the panel.
Nina, back to you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Thank you, James, and thank you, Orlando. If you could take a seat because you are going to join us on the panel, I'd be very grateful. Thank you. Just a reminder, I am Slido ready, so if you can get your questions to me and I'll put them to all of our guests on the panel as we go through this session. To discuss the research in more detail, I'm delighted to be joined on stage by leaders from two brands navigating their own advertising on TV journeys. So let me introduce you now to the panel in full. I'm first of all joined by Ben Farron, CEO and founder of Spoke. I've also got with me Jason Spencer, who is ITV Commercials, Director of Nations and Regions. Welcome. Sitting next to him, we've got Charlotte Ford, Europe Senior Marketing Director of Ruggable. And of course, you've already been introduced to Orlando. Thank you very much for joining me, all of you. Ben, you've just seen that presentation. You've seen the research. What did you make of it?
I think it's fair to say that a great deal of it resonates and characterises a lot of our experience over the last 5 or 6 years. So I should probably offer some context. Spoke is a classic D2C brand, which means we were founded 10 years ago, and we found that the most effective way to scale out of the gate was inevitably investing in performance marketing, digital marketing, giving money to Mark Zuckerberg. And that took us a long way at reasonably high speed for the first 5 or 6 years. And inevitably, we discovered that over time, the effectiveness of that sort of marketing started to wane. Everybody's familiar with the customer acquisition cost curve and the way that starts the climb on that steepens over time. And we realized that we would need to change our playbook and alter our marketing mix. And that's all in a background where we understood the marketing theory. We understood that advertising relentlessly at the bottom of the funnel with direct response ads, trying to get people to buy a thing now, is ultimately going to stop working. You don't have quite enough people in market to keep scaling at the rate that you will have done historically, and you need to build future demand. So we understood all the theory, and we also knew that if we wanted to take a bazooka to that problem, TV was probably the answer. But it turns out to be an incredibly daunting prospect. I can probably go into some detail later about how we got over that. But suffice to say, we've been through 3 rounds of TV advertising. We did something initially that you could characterize as maybe salesmanship back in 2019 on smaller budgets. We did what direct-to-consumer brands do, which is we try to treat TV like a performance marketing channel. The challenge with performance marketing is you get conditioned. You get conditioned to expect control and validation. And that's a very difficult thing to step away from. The idea that if an ad's not working, just turn it off overnight. And also, importantly, the idea that if it is working, you can take the numbers to your board and everyone's happy with what they see. So to let go of those two things, which are quite addictive, is very tricky. And our first round of advertising, as I say, we took a salesmanship approach, and we tried to measure an immediate response in a way that would validate what we were doing. But eventually we were persuaded to switch guns. It wasn't I can go into some more detail about why we didn't think it was working, but we didn't think it was delivering the response that we were looking for. It was neither one thing nor the other. We couldn't acquire customers efficiently in a way that we could measure, but we also didn't think we were building brand equity. We didn't think that an ad that was suggesting that people buy this now in fairly kind of cold functional terms was doing a great job for us on that front. So eventually we took the leap to do something more showmanship based with the sort of media strategy that Orlando's described. In other words, broad reach. And we tried to create an ad that would make people feel something and remember the brand and build that future demand.
Connection.
Yeah. And that's been incredibly successful for us over the last 3 or 4 years.
Do you think if the planets had aligned and you'd have had the research that we're learning about today, within that journey, that might have helped you get there quicker and avoid some of the problems that you've explained?
Possibly. I mean, this struggle that I describe, this dependency that I think people in our brand's position at a relatively early stage in its life on control and validation is really high. It's a hard thing to battle past. In our case, we were able to bridge to a world where we were creating a different kind of ads by striking a media for equity deal with ITV, and that played a really important role in getting us over the hump because it's a very different experience striking a deal like that as opposed to writing an enormous check. And the checks are enormous by comparison with the sort of budgets and money that you're putting away through your typical performance marketing
And we'll
channels.
come back to that a little later, and also this concept of one of the reasons we're here today, you talking about it potentially being a daunting prospect, so it'd be really good to get some advice from you for anybody watching. Jason, if I can turn to you, you and your team spend lots of time talking to new brands and those wanting to come back as well. We're talking about 2 different cohorts here. Does the research resonate with you and your experiences of talking to businesses?
Absolutely. I think what's really good is to kind of characterise it into that balance of salesmanship and showmanship, and to recognise that it's striking that balance early that's going to yield the best results. We typically find the big perceived barriers are around the complexity, how do I go about this, the perception about cost, because sometimes it's in your head rather than the reality, and also think about the creative challenge, which is obviously what we're here about to talk about today, because it can sometimes feel, relative to other channels, including social, quite a daunting prospect to embark upon, and that's really our job to kind of try and overcome those issues.
Okay, Charlotte, I want to bring you in. Welcome. You are very new to TV advertising. Before we chat about your experiences of that and how you got to be in this position where you've got your first campaign on air, shall we take a look at it? This is an ad for Ruggable.
Original tilage. It's saying you like the taste of jealousy right out of the gate. That is a lot of real estate for your own reflection, don't you think? See, because it's up there, I feel like I'm going to be hearing a lot about it. Ah, a ruggable rug. Screams tasteful with an eye for design. Annoying neat freak, maybe. You can stick it in the wash. I had you all wrong. This place is saying all the right things. Now we're talking.
Now we're talking. Charlotte, talk us through how you got to a place where Ruggable's first ad on TV was made.
Yeah, so we're a lot younger than Spoke. So Ruggable was founded in the US in 2018. We launched in the UK in 2021. So we've been here a little bit earlier, so a little bit later. But we're like a lot of brands that grew up around the time of COVID. We've spent all of our money on performance marketing to date. We've only ever invested in digital. And I think that made sense whilst channels like out of home and cinema fell away during the pandemic. But now audiences are back out there. And I think that's where the need for offline audiences, such as TV, is really important to break through at this point. So we really approached this point where we realised that actually to continue to scale in the way that we wanted to as a business, we needed to reach more customers. So TV was a really important decision for us, in that there was no other channel that could offer us the scale and the reach of TV. So that was a real no-brainer for us. But it was a bit of a labour of love to get there, I have to say.
Before we get on to that and your experiences of the labour of love, just tell me about the research that we've seen today, the Breakthrough Report. Does it resonate with you and your experiences?
Definitely. I think a lot of new to TV advertisers fall into that trap or that pitfall of, you know, I've got 30 seconds, I must immediately sell. So we've really focused on the showmanship side of things, both in the creative but also in the choice of peak programming, and really making that a core part of our mix. And, you know, it's quite fun. You get to see spikes in search interest when the time that people are watching Coronation Street. It's a very good way to prove that it's working. But yeah, I think that research has really, really helped us, and I also hope that it will help a lot of other advertisers too make the decision that TV is right for them.
Okay, so you in your role in the company, in Ruggable, were convinced that this was something you should try, advertising on television. Did everyone in the company agree?
I was lucky that I have an incredibly supportive management team. I think we're a US-based company, so there is a lack of knowledge sometimes about the TV market here. So things that ITV offer, such as the Backing Business Initiative, which we've taken part in, don't exist in the US. So there was definitely an education piece to go through, and also a confidence journey, because when you're talking to people that have solely invested in performance marketing that can, as Ben says, you know, Mark Zuckerberg, you can see the $3 that you get back in return of $1. There is definitely a confidence journey to go through to make everybody understand that actually the measurement framework for TV is going to look a bit different, and the time that it takes to pay back is going to take a bit longer. So just getting everyone's confidence level up to that, I think, does take work.
And how did you get there in terms of convincing the board that this was something good to invest in, that this could reap rewards?
I think lots of research, honestly. And I think more tools are available.
So evidence-based?
Absolutely. I mean, I think more tools now, like this report, are available to marketers to be able to demonstrate, you know, there is actually scientific evidence to prove the value of trying new channels, going on TV, changing your approach to creative, that I think we should all be taking advantage of.
Ben, what was your experience in terms of trying to persuade others, I mean, obviously CEO and founder, but that this would be a good investment?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, the biggest persuasion challenge was probably with myself. As I say, this is just a step change in the amount and the size of checks that we were cutting, and it was an intimidating prospect. And I had to let go of all my usual measurement tools. With that said, I think we're reasonably satisfied with the way that we've been able to measure the performance of advertising in this way. So, you know, as a recovering performance marketing junkie, it's certainly true that I'll look at organic brand search trends. You can certainly quantify what's happening there, and the results are good. But honestly, I think old school marketing funnel measurement is certainly something that we can get behind and believe in. The idea that you know, awareness will reliably lead to consideration and trial, I fundamentally believe is true. And so if I can see the awareness growing, and we establish that in a couple of different ways through traditional panel surveys with YouGov every quarter or 6 months. And Charlotte says there's a host of tools available now that will give you a read in month as to how your awareness is changing. And we've been able to see some really enormous moves on that front. So, you know, in a world where we've gone from a world where we would have seen basis points of movement in aided and unaided awareness, you know, 5 years ago. And once we started advertising with the reach of ITV, suddenly there are whole points of improvement going on in a 6-month period. We've more than doubled our awareness since we started these campaigns. And perhaps we talked about business effects. Perhaps the most important impact is in the way it delivers, mostly through existing channels. So, you know, I am able we are able to scale the business in our performance marketing channels much further than we ever anticipated, I think as a function of the fact that we're building that future demand. I have a sensational performance marketing team who are right on top of their game, but I don't think even they would be able to go as far as they have done.
So TV has complemented that original way that you
Absolutely. The balanced marketing mix is delivering more than we would do if we spent all of the money at the bottom of the funnel, for sure.
Okay. I want to focus now on the creative. We have touched on it, but bring Orlando in. You mentioned the report that you did in 2019, just to remind people how to scale up without screwing up, and the research that you were working on it then. Fast forward to now, to 2024. What has changed?
Well, I think people have a better idea, actually, of what it takes to make creative that will connect with audiences. You know, we know now that there are certain things that capture attention, that drive an emotional response. The work that I've done shows that, you know, if you're going to capture the sort of broad beam attention of the brain, then you have to use the living. You have to show things in life, you know, the human condition. And you've seen some great examples today, you know, and project a personality, all of those things, actually things that we knew about in the 1960s with the great creative revolution that came over from the States, but that we've sort of forgotten a little bit about in the last 15, 20 years in the performance revolution, as you might call it. Because that kind of advertising looks very different. That sort of salesmanship advertising tends to be quite flat. Lots of words on the screen, lots of direction, me at you. You know, what we found in that report with Tom Roach was that, you know, there was a lot of staring, you know, at the camera. You know, you will do this, you know, type thing. Very direct. And that pushes people away, actually. If you're not in the market, if you're not in the buying window already, it's really not interesting, and you just look away. So there are these two ways of thinking about advertising. The salesmanship for the half interested, terrific, very important in the early years of establishing a brand, of establishing a business, because you've got to get your product out there, tell people what it's about. But there's this showmanship, which is actually more important for growth and profit over a longer period, and which requires an understanding of the human condition, people, movement, all of those things that people inherently find interesting.
Have you any idea why that's changed? Why it's going back to potentially focusing on that?
Well, I think there have been a lot of things in the industry. You know, I mean, I hate to say it, but my books people have started to read that talk about this sort of thing, and the relationship between creative style and business effects. You know, I think is much clearer now in people's minds, and so I think that is perhaps part of it. And it may be partly as a function of some of the brands that we were looking at this year, perhaps less fintech, you know. But I think there's a general appreciation now that we need to think more about that kind of showmanship school, because we've seen this massive swing in the last 10, 15 years over to salesmanship. And that only gets you so far, as Ben was saying.
Jason, just on that salesmanship versus showmanship, any advice for anybody watching who might be daunted by the prospect of showmanship for any reason?
I think it's a good question. It's a constant challenge we come across, because it can feel like, as we've heard today, not necessarily the place you would start from. But I think what we've been trying to do is kind of twofold. One is to overcome those barriers I talked about, and the examples of how we work with Media for Equity and Match Funding are kind of classics of that. But also looking at measurement. How can we help measure? How can we show and quantify the multiplier effects that you have from investing in showmanship? Showmanship undoubtedly has an effect that you cannot achieve by salesmanship on its own. And that multiplier effect from brand building right through to sales is evident, and something we can show time and time again.
And Orlando, again, just to add to what Jason's saying, any tips in terms of brands trying to navigate this, the difference and the overlap between salesmanship?
That's right. Well, I mean, it depends on where you are in your business, the growth cycle, but, typically, Les Binet, Peter Field talk about 60% on your showmanship and 40% of your budget on salesmanship. Now, that changes a bit depending on your business, but, a bit more eventually towards your showmanship advertising. More on your salesmanship to start with, but more towards showmanship as you grow. But what they also show, quite interestingly, is that showmanship doesn't just drive the immediate sale, but it makes every aspect of your business better. It drives your salesmanship harder, as Ben was saying, but it also reduces the cost of recruitment to your business. It helps maintain, retain staff. It also makes the cost of credit lower. You get a cheaper loan if you've got an established brand. So showmanship lubricates all parts of your business in a way that salesmanship really is only focused on the immediate sale and those short-term spikes.
Ben, how has your creative journey changed between the campaigns that you've done on TV?
Well, I suppose I've already alluded to the biggest change, which was between the first ad, which had more salesmanship energy about it, and our very conscious decision on the back of the sort of research that we've talked about. And genuinely, I mean, that's the answer, isn't it? It has so much more currency now. It's everywhere. Orlando's book, Byron Sharp's book, the long and the short of it. We have multiple copies of these things floating around the office. So we've become progressively convinced that showmanship was the way forward. And that required, obviously, a different ad, which is actually for us was in many ways the most intimidating prospect, given that we weren't we were using the Media for Equity deal to cover the equity. Actually, the single biggest check that I had to write was for the creative, which is nerve-wracking. And we spent a lot of money on it, well into six figures. I'm incredibly conscious of the fact that you can, in fact, make great creative on a shoestring. But the challenge is that there's massive risk attending that in the creative and in the execution. And I suppose we decided that, given how much we were investing, even if it was in equity, we needed to mitigate some of that risk by working with some great agencies to create ads we were really proud of. In terms of the two ads that we made at that level, in the first case, we were preoccupied with the idea of making people feel something, trying to create an emotive ad that people would remember. Turns out to be quite hard to make trousers emotional, but I think we pulled it off. We created an ad that I'm still incredibly proud of. I think the challenge we felt in looking at the research afterwards and looking at how it tested on System1 was it didn't quite have the fluency and recall optimized as hard as we would like. As a brand that's new to market, it's incredibly important that not only do people feel something, but they remember what they felt it about. And people aren't in market to buy trousers every day, so they have to hold that recall for some time. It has to stay salient for a while. So in the second ad that we made, there was a real focus on driving that fluency, and you can see the evidence for that in the ad, in the big logo that keeps turning up, and the measurement tape, and the very clear focus on trousers. And sure enough, it tests better on that front, which we're gratified by.
What are your tips for anyone watching this who is daunted as a new brand about taking that plunge, making that spend?
Well, I mean, I could be positive about it and say, be brave.
We want to inspire, so let's be
empty
positive.
Advice. But I mean, there is a lot of that. And if I wanted to be slightly darker about it, I'd say you haven't really got an alternative. Just sitting at the bottom of the funnel forever is a playbook that will run its course. And if you don't find a way of driving awareness at the top of the funnel, you will run out of runway at some stage. And you have to plan for this before you get there. There is no bigger tool for driving that awareness at the top of the funnel than making a TV ad. I mean, I should probably step back from, trying to offer some prescription for every brand in the world. But certainly in our case, it was something I don't feel we really had a choice over.
Charlotte, do you agree?
Yeah, I think you have to identify, as Ben says, the signals that it means it's time to look for that. In our case, it was, are we becoming too reliant on promotions and discounts and sales? That's not a spiral that I think any brand wants to be in. And also, are we going too hard after the people who are actively in market for a rug is quite small. But actually there's a much broader opportunity to reach people that just want to buy something to make their home, complete or refreshed after a renovation, or perhaps they have got a new puppy that has weed everywhere. So that's where Ruggable comes in really handy. So I think for us, it was really about going after those signals that have identified, right, there is a need to build brand equity for us, because otherwise we're not going to scale at the rate we want to. And then having that sort of, I guess, building that confidence up and having that and taking that leap really into TV advertising.
Thank you, Charlotte. Jason, just really briefly, we've talked about new businesses, new brands for the first time, and two members of the panel who have taken that leap for the first time a few years ago or more recently. What's your advice, really briefly, for those thinking of returning to advertise on TV?
Well, if you're thinking of returning, look at what's happened to your business in the period since you were last on TV. And if you can afford not to come back onto TV and your business is strong enough without talking to new customers, great. But too often there is a gap there, and we can also help to measure the impact that's had on your business by not being on TV. There's a cost to it. And I would say, come and challenge us to demonstrate that.
Look, affordability is obviously a concern for any business. Is there anything ITV can do, is doing, to help with that concern?
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit here around the media cost side of things with matched funding, media for equity. But the other element is often around the cost of creative, and our commitment is to make TV advertising in all its forms as accessible to as many businesses as possible. We work with hundreds of brands every year who are either new to TV or testing it for the first time or returning, and it's to reduce that barrier to entry. So we've had a creative production team who make ads at cost. We make ads, about 1,200 ads a year across our internal creative production team, and that's enabling brands to test TV, to invest that money into the media as well, and we work with them to help measure it. So there's a number of different things we're doing. For some brands, that works incredibly well. For others, it's something that they can sort of dip into and out of, but we'd urge brands to come and chat to us.
A little bird has told me he's got something new to share with the panel and the audience. What is it, Jason?
Well, we've got our creative production team that I talked about there. We're looking at expanding the offering. So we're really excited to launch today a generative AI creative production service to expand our offering. It augments what we already do with brands, looks at the creative processes to augment that using market-leading AI tools alongside voiceover artists, but powered by the creative producers in our team. Okay. And we're doing our first ads launching today.
Okay, so you've got an AI ad. Shall we have a look at it?
Go for it.
Okay.
It's been so long since my last adventure. Wait, could it be? Another trip? They'll definitely be needing me. From cruising the Caribbean, to exploring vibrant markets, to relaxing on sunlit beaches, I'm finally back in action. There's nothing like the thrill of getting away. Travel House, your trusted travel partner, right on your high street.
Jason, we're running out of time before I move to the audience questions. Briefly, tell me how that ad came about.
Well, it was a brand who thought that they couldn't necessarily afford TV creative. As you can see, it's a Welsh-based travel agents with a number of branches, and we work with them end-to-end using a combination of generative AI tools powered by the team our end. But importantly, it's about democratising that, enabling brands to test it, and also working with Orlando and the team to measure the effectiveness of that alongside it. It's one thing being able to do it, but you need to be able to do it well.
Yeah, measurement is key. Orlando, you have tested this ad.
We have, yes. I mean, it falls in the top 25% of all TV ads, you know, so it's achieving very high scores. And it's done it, you know, through the face, the eyes. It's got a fluent device, as I describe it, a character that could run and run in the passport, you know, and it's got music. It's just got a bit of charm about it. So, you know, I think it's quite promising and very exciting for new to TV advertisers, because they can suddenly leapfrog, you know, with this kind of offer, established advertisers with that kind of score. I mean, it's amazing.
Charlotte, one way to test success is pre-test. What else have you done to be able to gauge whether your first ad has been successful?
I mean, I think Ben's talked a bit about it in the sense of being addicted to that performance marketing effect. So there's initial things you can see in sort of, are people searching for my brand more? Are my paid brand terms improving as well? Things like that. But ultimately, there's also measurement frameworks that ITV have helped us with. So we've done a geo-test as part of our campaign, and then MMM as well. So there's a number of different ways we're measuring success with this. It's important to know there's no silver bullet with TV. There is an element of trust. But ultimately, it's the sort of the commitment and the help that ITV have given us around showcasing what's improving.
Okay, super. I'm going to move on to questions from people watching. Thank you very much for all of those that you've sent in so far. Keep them coming on Slido, just that address again, www.slido.com, #breakthrough. I'm going to start with a question for Jason. Is the impact of TV you show dependent on level of spend? If we have minimal budget, can we still get that cut through and response? That has been asked by Andrew. You've touched on this a little bit, but if you could expand, please, Jason.
Well, I think one of the beauties of ITV is we have a number of different regions, and some of those regions divide further. So what I'd probably say to the person asking that question is it depends on what you're trying to achieve, where you're trying to achieve it. I think if you were looking at that, a particular budget nationally, potentially, in a given region, and testing it, and much like Charlotte's doing, test that versus a control region, I would say that's probably the way to go. But I think it's a combination of what sort of reach are you going to drive, to Orlando's point earlier, what impact do you want it to do, and is your budget commensurate with achieving that? But definitely come and talk. We can adapt it based on regions.
Okay, thank you, Jason. A question for Orlando now. Do you think brands can start using AI to deliver the same impact with their creative? That's asked by Kurt.
Good question. Well, I think we've seen an example here. There are other examples that we've been looking at and working on, which I think show great promise, really. And you know, I think, as I said, I think they give you an opportunity as a new to TV advertiser to try something that actually is pretty good and very good in some cases. So I think there is opportunity, but I think you do have to know the sort of basics of what good showmanship advertising might look like. You know, so the importance of character, the importance of psychological transformation, emotion through the face, body, the eyes, hands, you know, all of these things that create a connection with the audience. And there are principles, you know, humour and various other things we need to think about, and how you stand out from the competition. All of these things which we've known for a long time, but, you know, still need to be applied to in this AI world. I mean, AI is a tool. It still requires some knowledge and understanding of what connects with people, and so it's to be used alongside, you know, great creativity and as an aid to creativity.
Yeah, let's hope, in many, many different fields. Another question this is in from Kate. I saw the broadcasters launch Lantern, a measurement collaboration last week. Will this help brands measure the performance effects of TV? I think I'll give that to you, Jason.
Absolutely. I think what is great is that the TV companies are collaborating for the good of TV and on behalf of advertisers to focus on outcomes. ultimately what Spoke and Ruggable are looking to do is not to just drive reach, but to ultimately drive business growth. And this, I think, is a great position to be in, with everyone coming together to be able to demonstrate that, and again, make this accessible to all brands. It's going to be retrospective and be available towards the back end of this year. So I'd say anyone who's been advertising in the last couple of years, come and talk to the broadcasters. We will help you to understand the impact that's had on some of those outcome measures.
Okay, that piece of advice quite clear again. Come and talk to the broadcasters. A question for Ben. This is from somebody who didn't want to give their name. How should brands think about balancing linear with BVOD?
I'm not incredibly well equipped to answer this, just on the basis that we've done a limited amount of BVOD. Our experience to date has been that there is always a premium attached to the kind of targeting that comes with BVOD. And we have been sufficiently happy with the results that we've seen, the raw reach and awareness gains that we've seen through linear, that we haven't felt the need to experiment hard with BVOD to date. But that doesn't mean that it won't be a reasonable part of the marketing mix in the future. I just am not myself incredibly qualified to tell you how it works.
So
maybe Jason has.
To give a perspective, I think we are seeing a big growth in streaming behaviours and viewing, and I think it would depend for the person who's asked that question on the brand and the sector as much as the audience they're looking to reach. So we've got some great insights on that, and striking the right balance between your budget across those to maximise reach, but also to look at the outcomes you can deliver in the short and medium term. So there's not one answer for everything, but I'd say let's look at what they're trying to do, and then we can work out the optimal blend.
It's worth saying that the results that we've had were completely counterintuitive to me. I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't watch masses of linear TV myself. And I'd assume that our customer would mostly be watching on catch-up, and that as a consequence, that on-demand would prove itself to be one of the most important dimensions of the work that we were doing with ITV. But as I say, I was pleasantly surprised by the amount of reach that I could get through linear, and it's made enough of a difference that our experimentations in BVOD are limited so far.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. Next question for Orlando. You talk about TV being a trusted environment at the start of your presentation. Will TV lose that trust if many brands start using AI as their creative? That's a question. Another question from Kurt.
Oh, a very good question. It's very difficult to say, isn't it? I think there's so much about TV that creates trust. You know, I mean, its relationship with journalism, the news, all sorts of aspects that TV brings with it, actually, and supports, you know, journalism and democracy ultimately. You know, that means that it, I think, will always be a trusted medium. So, you know, I think that's a very, you know, we need to remember that, and all the evidence that we have so far shows that, you know, TV is the most trusted medium of all the others, you know, pretty much that I think we've got out there. So I think it will continue, but let's see.
A question very specifically to Jason. What is the role of TV for a brand that can only sell to specific cities, regions?
If it's specific cities or regions, then I think it depends on whether those match up with ITV's regionality, because that will be a good starting point. But I'd also then say this is where ITVX comes in brilliantly. We've got 42 million registered users down to postcode level. Based on catchment areas, we can look to ensure that message only goes out to those cities, those postcodes that you want to reach.
So some micro-targeting there.
Yeah.
A question to Charlotte. What can media planners do to encourage clients to invest in TV and make it less daunting for them? We've touched on this a little bit, but a bit more if you will.
Yeah, I think it's take the time to learn their business and learn the signals that are indicating that TV's the right opportunity for them. So I think, you know, it's something we've had lots of conversations about, Jason, but I think it's take that opportunity, and also it does come back to audience. You know, show them where their audience is and where the opportunity is on TV. That is the role of excellent media planning, and also then similarly serve up the right research to them, so that equip them to be able to go to their boards or their management teams to be able to say, this is why I have conviction in TV.
Okay, a question for Ben. If you had to pick one channel that complements TV best, what would it be?
Oh, Lord. I mean, I wouldn't hold myself out as a media expert, and I'm sure there are many ways of answering that question. I mean, we've talked about very specific tie-ups, complementing some advertising against sports with some outdoor advertising outside sports grounds and so on. And I suspect there are many answers like that, all unique to the brand and the opportunity in front of it. I think the only thing I can say with certainty is that it's important to keep investing hard at the bottom of the funnel and to reap the rewards of the awareness that you're driving at the top of the funnel and making sure those things stay in balance. And of course, when I refer to the bottom of the funnel, I'm mostly referring to the direct response channels like Facebook, Instagram, and Google that we invest in so heavily. But there may be different answers.
I mean, I think, so one thing I would say is actually in previous businesses, I've seen a really good success with both salesmanship and showmanship advertising together. So direct response TV and brand TV, as it were, running them both together. Brand TV improved the performance of my direct response TV by 24%. So that was quite considerable. But then also I'd say I'm a really big believer in PPC and search being a really core part of your marketing mix, and TV perfectly complements that because it attracts attention and most people then go to search for it.
Okay.
You certainly want to be on your PPC game if you're going to spend all of this money at the top of the funnel.
Completely.
Question for Orlando, which picks up perfectly from what you just said, Charlotte. How much does showmanship, salesmanship vary in performance between channels? Do the different audiences respond differently, or generally speaking, do they respond in the same way?
Between channels, do we mean between different, I guess, okay. So every kind of channel, every media channel can do both of these jobs, salesmanship and showmanship. But if it excels at one, it rarely excels at the other. Except perhaps TV, because TV can do both jobs brilliantly. It's in a unique position to do that because it gives you the depth of attention, it gives you the breadth of reach, trusted. And so it's brilliant at showmanship, but now has so many opportunities for you to target your salesmanship advertising to people more directly. And of course, can even be done on linear TV through daytime as well, where you get quite quick responses. So TV gives you the opportunity to do both the role of showmanship and salesmanship really very neatly. Now, if you look at other channels, they might have slightly different strengths, different balances, but I don't think there's anything really like TV to do the job of showmanship, and really, because of its ability to reach people and its depth of attention, that salesmanship is extremely good. It's extremely good for that too.
Okay, we will leave this discussion at that point then. Thank you very much to Orlando, to Charlotte, to Jason and to Ben for joining me for this session. And thank you very much for joining us as well. I hope we've provided plenty of inspiration and some guidance today for businesses hoping to either make their first foray into TV advertising or indeed those thinking about returning to television advertising. I just wanted to make it really clear you can find out even more in the actual breakthrough report. If you would like a copy, you can email ITV or System1 Group. The details, those email addresses are coming up as soon as the webinar ends. And if you've got any further questions, you can reach out to ITV Commercial. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for having me. We hope to see you all soon. Bye-bye. Thank you.